Thanks for coming out. Hello, everyone. I'll repeat that. Hello, everyone. Bienvenidos. Thanks for coming out to Central Library today. My name is Diane Olivo-Posner, and I am the Principal Librarian, Associate Director of the Exploration and Creativity Department here with the Los Angeles Public Library.
She's my boss, so please clap. I'm Kevin Awakuni. I'm also a librarian here in the Exploration and Creativity Department, and we're here to welcome you to this afternoon's LA Made program. LA Made presents Strong Words HolidayS Show.
Now, before we begin, we'd like to take a moment to thank the National Endowment for the Humanities, our Library Foundation, and our behind-the-scenes staff for helping bring the LA Made programs to you. LA Made focuses on the diverse landscape of Los Angeles, highlighting the immense artistic and performance talent that has developed in the course of the city's eclectic history. If you would like to see more of our amazing programs, please visit our online calendar at lapl.org/events, that would be EVENTS. And for our LA Made programs, visit lapl.org/LAMADE, LAMADE.
Yep. We'd also like to take this opportunity to recognize and acknowledge the first people of this land, honor their elders past and present, as well as their descendants who are citizens of these nations. For more information on which territory you may reside on, check out native-land.ca. Just a couple of other housekeeping tips before we begin. Please silence your electronic devices to not distract our speakers. Take a moment to just notice the exits, just in case of anything, one here. If you parked in the garage today, if you parked in the library under the garage, you can get your parking ticket validated at the information desk in the main lobby, and the parking will only be $1 as long as you parked after 1 and leave before 5. And please, yes, you can clap for that. It's a big deal. $1 parking. And please no eating or drinking in the auditorium. We like to keep it clean unless it's bottled water. And the bathrooms are down the hallway to your right.
And now for today's amazing program, LA Made presents Strong Words HolidayS Show. Strong Words returns to LA Made with an all-new HolidayS Show filled with stories and music that celebrate all your favorite holiday feels. You'll laugh, you'll tear up, and you'll feel the love that only comes this time of year. Really, only this time?
I mean, that's what Larry told me, so.
Strong Words, hosted by Larry Dean Harris. Woo!
Yay!
Is celebrating its 12th year as the favorite storytelling for grown-ups show of Silver Lake and Atwater Village. And now, to kick off today's program is Larry Dean Harris.
You're here! I always worry. I just flew in from Ohio, where I had the best Hanukkah with my Jewish family. We did it all. I had 2 bowls of the best homemade matzo ball soup, had fresh latkes, spun the dreidel, did my Hebrew prayers the first night, and then the subsequent nights they said, "It's okay, Larry, we've got this." But it was fantastic, and I'm thrilled to be back in LA. We have a slight program substitution. 2 of our folks got COVID, the mother-daughter duo of Vicki and Molly. So I got on my horn, and I got a great A-list of folks I can call upon, and I'll tell you a little bit about them. But first, we've got a special video presentation. Gentlemen?
It's a great video presentation.
Latkes. I had latkes. They were great. And I got gifts. I forgot the best part. So it's really raised the bar for my Christmas people next weekend, by the way. Yes, I celebrate both. I am bi-seasonal. Can we roll the video?
Did you have applesauce or sour cream?
I had sour cream. I like both.
You can't be a Jew if you don't like sour cream. That's 100% true.
This is our 95th show. Can you believe it? This is our 4th show at the library as part of LA Made. We were, I think, the last show before COVID. We were here in January of 2020, and then everything went away. And bless their hearts, the library had us do an online holiday show in December of 2020, and we had 650 people watching. Do you know what the sound of 650 people laughing on Zoom sounds like? We were all in our living rooms all across LA, Palm Springs, and Ohio performing, and it was just the weirdest thing being in a vacuum and knowing, we didn't find out afterwards how many folks were tuned in, but it was insane. It is so great to be back live with real audience members who are here for stories and music.
Larry, I have a
And,
question. Larry,
Amy,
what are you going to do for the 100th performance of Strong Words?
well, my goal is to do the Rose Bowl. But we have some other possibilities as well. It'll probably be in June, and it's going to be big. I've already got folks like begging to be in the lineup. So I've already got a couple of really crazy things in the works. So we're good. Let's see a video.
Walking down the streets of town, got the winter blues. Suddenly I see a crowd of people passing through. A cathedral door, they were caroling, and above I heard the church bells ring. Then I heard a choir sing, and I knew what I must do.
Ladies and gentlemen, Todd Murray.
Getting into the swing of Christmas, my favorite time of year. Hi, everyone. When friends come calling and snow starts falling to grab a cup or two of cheer. You know I'm jumping into the swing of Christmas. I can't deny it anymore. I hear carols playing, see children swaying by Santas in every store. How's my lip sync? So, Lord, I know of that Frosty Joe and his run-in with that cop. Well, I was driving in L.A. when an officer in my way put his hand up and hollered, "Stop all the madness and get into the swing of Christmas. And when your dance is done, sing across the land, Merry Christmas and bless everyone." I'm going to spare you my dance break. This was, we recorded this a couple years ago, and that old car's name is Elsie, 1931, and the beautiful blonde dog is my dog, Willa. Oh, let's dream of snow and of mistletoe and of chestnuts that go pop. And if a Scrooge is in your way, who is bah-humbugging your day, you put your hand up and holler, "Stop all the madness and get into the swing of Christmas." And when your dance is done, sing across the land, Merry Christmas and bless everyone. Sing across the land, Merry Christmas and bless everyone.
Mr. Todd Murray. So, we haven't met. I'm Larry Dean Harris, and I'd like to know a little bit about you. Where are my Hanukkah people? Excellent. Where are my Christmas people? Where are my Scrooges and Grinches? Most importantly, where are my virgins? Because virgins are really important this time of year. Who's never been to a Strong Words show? Wow, that's fantastic. Well, welcome to everybody, and as well as all of our folks watching at home, because we're being recorded, and that'll be online later this week. So we're grateful you all are here. We've been doing this for 12 years. Isn't that crazy? And this is our 95th show, as I said, and I'm just so excited by the amazing group of storytellers I'm going to bring out and have them join us. Because we're used to like being in a tiny little outdoor space and everybody's sitting out in the crowd. We didn't have fancy green room like we do here. So, I love the story behind this story. And I'm going to let our first storyteller share it with you. Literally, last minute phone call to Elisa Barrett. Saves the day.
Hi, everyone. Hi. I have a confession to make. I wasn't supposed to be here today. Another performer, as you heard, a mother-daughter duo, was all set to hold down one of the Hanukkah spots on this bill, but they got COVID. So Larry Dean called me to ask if I would reprise a piece that I performed last winter at Strong Words. Naturally, I jumped at the chance to return to the stage. Like all former theater nerds, I still yearn for the spotlight. But this year, something felt wrong about the piece. And here's the part that made me pause. I'm talking here about Hanukkah, a minor Jewish holiday that's been juiced up in America to console Jewish children during the Christmas season. I wrote, Hanukkah, it's got all the usual. Hostile invaders, plucky underdogs, triumph against all odds. Exactly. Here, the underdogs are a group of Jewish rebels, the Maccabees. Driven into the wilderness, they fight back, drive out the Syrian invaders, and take back the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. But what's this? The temple is a wreck. Even the consecrated oil used to illuminate the sanctuary has been trashed, and there's only enough oil for one night. In despair, the Maccabees call out to God, and voila, the oil lasts for 8 full nights. In other words, people tried to kill us. We survived. It was a miracle. Let's eat. December 2022, funny. December 2023, not so much. So with some trepidation, I would like to talk instead about Israel and Palestine. Not the conflict of today, but a moment when peace seemed not only possible, but imminent. December 1998. When the Oslo Accords were still in effect and the Second Intifada had yet to erupt. 1998, long time ago. I had just graduated from law school and landed a prestigious fellowship to work with the Women's Center for Legal Aid and Counseling in East Jerusalem, right on the border with Ramallah, before the wall was built. I was fresh off a semester working in the newly liberated South Africa. And here in the West Bank, I was excited to learn from an incredible group of women who had convened an all-female parliament and created a constitution for the future state of Palestine based on principles of international human rights law. Each morning, I would walk from my apartment through the old city of Jerusalem. The old city of Jerusalem, there is nothing like it on earth. You stand in the old city and history envelops you. In Jerusalem, wrote the Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish, I walk from one epoch to another. The prophets over there are sharing history, ascending heaven and returning less discouraged and melancholy because love and peace are holy and are coming to town. Or as Rabbi Stanley Hyatt, poet and Angelino, wrote, I love the doves of Jerusalem. which sail and squabble over the Temple Mount and nest impartially in the Western Wall and the Dome of the Rock, the Yeshiva Porat Yosef, and the museum at Al-Aqsa. Close your eyes. You can hear the Muslims calling the faithful to prayer, the Shema being uttered at the Western Wall, and the Stations of the Cross being walked by pilgrims of every Christian variety. Breathe in deeply. You can smell fresh bread of every variety, recently baked, raisin-filled challah and zaktar manakish with olives and spinach and spices. So imagine me, 28, full of curiosity, walking each morning past the Doves of Jerusalem to Jaffa Gate on the east side of the Old City and jumping into a sharut. Now, if you don't know that term, a sharut is like an Uber, but a minivan packed to the gills, blasting pop music from across the Middle East. Talk in the sharut every morning was heady. Everyone was abuzz about the future where Palestine would join the United Nations and live peacefully with Israel. We debated everything on that sharut. Imagine the founding fathers debating the pros and cons of bicameral legislature in a minivan instead of at a constitutional convention. Well, it was like that every morning. Then we would arrive at Aram Junction, one of the many security checkpoints between East Jerusalem and Ramallah. The concrete bunkers and barbed wire spoke volumes of the ever-present tension, even during this relative period of peace. We would all disembark, my fellow taxi riders to have their papers checked by the IDF, and me to stop at the local bodega for food to share with my colleagues at lunch that day. That discrepancy gnawed at me. It still does. So I'd go to the office, do my job, legal research, memo writing, grunt work, which I was more than happy to do for the privilege of being around these incredible visionary women. Well, one day I'm standing at the copy machine making duplicates of a particular legal opinion. This was in the days before everything was digitized. And I was standing next to my colleague Shireen, a young social worker who negotiated with Israeli, Jordanian, and Egyptian authorities for the safe passage of Palestinian women facing honor killings in the West Bank and Gaza. That December, about half of the women in the office were also celebrating Ramadan. Ramadan is the 9th month of the Islamic calendar and is observed by Muslims worldwide as a month of fasting, prayer, reflection, and community. Now, I say about half of the women because Palestinians follow many faiths. They are Roman Catholic, Greek Orthodox, Druze, Sunni Muslim, Shia, and more. But everyone, regardless of religion, was stunned into silence when younger me naively said, "God, I don't know how you guys fast for a whole month. By the end of Yom Kippur, I always feel like I'm about to faint." Well, after a moment that felt like it lasted a lifetime, everyone piled on with questions. "What? You're Jewish? What were you thinking? What does your mother think about your being here? What does your rabbi say?" I mean, I can understand why they might not have spotted me. When we met, my spouse Joshua said, "Are you sure you're Jewish? You look like a little Catholic girl." Combine the blue eyes, a nose job, and the name Barrett, which was a gift from an Irish immigration officer at Ellis Island who could not pronounce whatever name we arrived from Eastern Europe with, and I get it. So, after some loving interrogation and impromptu communal meal, folks began to drift back to work, and I thought the moment had passed. Then Shireen extended the most gracious of invitations. You could come back tomorrow with an overnight bag and spend the evening with me and my family in Sheikh Jarrah. I think you'd really like it. Sheikh Jarrah is a Palestinian neighborhood in East Jerusalem that Shireen's family had lived in for generations. Their ancestral home was a 3-story limestone walk-up, its walls festooned with family photos and mementos from various trips to Mecca. Shireen herself had made Hajj several years earlier. We arrived an hour before the breaking of the fast and retired to Shireen's room, where she observed evening prayers. I sat on the floor next to her, meditating, quietly saying the prayers of the Amidah. Then the feast was on. Food, fragrant, beautiful, bounteous food filled every surface and the long covered balcony where Shireen's extended family gathered. Parents, sisters, brothers, uncles, aunts, cousins, grandparents. I can still see them. The generations gathered together, a plate raised, a prayer offered, dates and honey to celebrate the sweetness of life. It reminded me of Rosh Hashanah. Much has happened in the 35 years since that December night in Jerusalem. So much. So much heartbreak and sorrow. And yet, life has a funny way of circling back on itself. After years spent in public interest law, I have returned to the field of conflict resolution. I work at a wonderful nonprofit that equips young people with the tools to manage conflict, navigate complexity, embrace their differences, and reduce violence in order to positively affect their future and ours. Our founder, a woman who is a member of the Baha'i faith, says that building peace is like sharing a communal meal. Like peace, a communal meal is built on the work of many hands, often women, who toil behind the scenes to bring it into being. Once seated at the table, we have an opportunity to practice empathy and curiosity. Even when disputes arise, ideas clash, and tempers flare, we can make the choice to stay at the table and practice peace. Because peace is more than a feeling. Like love and hope, it must be practiced, one day at a time, one meal at a time, one moment at a time, one person at a time. So this holiday season, I invite you to practice peace in word and deed, in person and online, and to join me in a song of peace. It's called Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, which means peace will come upon us yet. And if you know it, please sing along. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam Shalom. Salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam Shalom. Peace.
I usually don't cry till the end of the show. You ready, young lady? Please welcome back to the Strong Word stage, Cara Lopez Lee.
What a nice welcome. Thank you. That was beautiful. Thank you so much. All right, so here's my most persistent childhood memory of my dad. Him bellowing, "Let's go, Cara," and me running to keep up, and him never looking back to see if I'm still there. And look, I understand. He was a busy guy. My dad, I didn't actually mostly grow up with him. He's been married 7 times. Very, very busy. And so he turned me over to his parents to raise me. He does have one other child, my half-sister, and I was always worried he was going to leave her in the dust too, but there wasn't much I could do about that because I didn't grow up with her. The year this story takes place, 2004, I was 41, and my sister was 8. So it's 2004, Christmas Day, and my dad's 6th wife has just landed in rehab. Okay, look, she's a lovely woman, and the first stepmom who ever really made me feel like part of a family, and the only mom that my little sister has ever known. But she suffers from depression, and she kicked off this holiday season by nearly drinking herself to death. So my dad has decided to be the hero and give his wife a Hallmark sort of Christmas, a family caravan to visit her at her sober living home in the bowels of LA. So my dad is the kind of hero who requires a lot of followers, and, and I'm the kind of daughter who craves approval. So I've decided to fly home from Denver to Los Angeles for this one-day quest, with my husband in tow, whether he likes it or not, for moral support. Now, my dad has also insisted that both of his parents come with us, even though they have not spoken to each other since their divorce 30 years ago. So my dad lives really close to LAX, and when my husband and I arrive, he picks us up at the airport, and like 5 minutes later, we're at his house, and he's already herding all of us, the whole family, into the garage and giving me rapid-fire instructions. He says he's going to drive my grandpa in the lead car, and then he's going to lend me the other family car so I can drive everyone else. Everyone else being my husband, my grandmother, and my 8-year-old sister. Before I take you with us on this journey, you should know that this is the early days of cellular phones, so it's not that unusual that my father and I are the only two in this group who own them. However, I recently lost mine, which I admit to him. And he says, well, that's okay. I programmed the GPS. Besides, you'll be following me. And I say, yeah, that's great, Dad. But, before we go, just in case, maybe shouldn't I? And he cuts me off and says, we're late. Let's go, Cara. And before I can ask, where? He's already hustling my grandpa into the car and tearing out of the driveway. And my dad drives kind of like he walks, speeding and dodging and never looking back to see if I'm there. But I know this, so I am on him turn for turn. Until about a half hour later, we're somewhere in central LA, and I'm sitting behind him at a red light when, without warning, my dad suddenly switches to the left turn lane just as the light turns green, and I get carried helplessly past him in moving traffic. Before I can turn around and try to catch him, the GPS announces, "You have arrived at your destination." And we all look around us in confusion. My husband, my grandma, my little sister. We're in the middle of this neighborhood, just a bunch of houses, nothing that looks remotely like a rehab in sight. So I look back at the GPS, and the address has vanished from the screen. I guess we passed it? I don't know. So here's the thing. My dad never wrote down the address, never told anyone in this car the name of this place, never taught me how to use this GPS. But if my father has taught me anything, it's survival. So we're just going to go back to the intersection where I lost him. Maybe he waited. Nope. So I think, okay, he made that left turn, so I'm going to try the left turn that I apparently missed and stop at the first likely looking building, which is a nursing home. But they tell me the rehab is right next door. Whew. Except my stepmom, not there. They suggest I try the rehab down the street. Apparently, there's a rehab on every square block of central LA. And my stepmom is in none of them. Meanwhile, my 8-year-old sister is just throwing really helpful advice from the back seat. Maybe we should call my mom. Maybe we should wait for Dad. Maybe we should. And my grandma says, Mija, in situations like this, it's best to be quiet. But my sister is panicked. She says, what if we don't make it in time for visiting hours to see my mom? And then it hits me, for the first time, I'm not the only one who'll pay the price for my inability to keep up with Dad. And I want to cry, But instead, I just yell at this driver who won't let me merge. Stop denying reality. I'm here. And my sister says, are you talking to me? I say, no, of course not, sweetie. So after about 45 minutes of this, my grandma says, I think your father mentioned friendly something. So I hunt down the last surviving payphone in all of LA with this tattered yellow pages just hanging from it by a string, and I find Friendly House. And I call, and they put my dad on the line. And he says, well, why didn't you just follow us when we pulled into that gas station? Nobody knew that's what you were doing, Dad. Well, then why didn't you just follow the GPS? Oh, my God, Dad, could you just tell me how to get there? So he does. And back in the car, my husband explains to my little sister that these are the moments in life that are upsetting at the time, but become funny memories that families laugh about later. So a few minutes later, we arrive back in that neighborhood at an old Victorian house with a teeny tiny sign that says Friendly House. And we get out, and my dad's waiting to explain why he ditched us back there. It seems he spotted gas selling for several cents cheaper than anywhere else in LA. So I kind of understand. So we go inside, and my stepmom is ready with a very friendly, well, hope you guys don't need a drink, because you're not going to find one here. A very tense visit follows, made all the more awkward by my little sister's constant questions like, so does everyone who stays here have an allergy to alcohol? Afterward, my dad decides to stay behind for Christmas dinner with his wife and her new friends. And look, that kind of devotion is probably why they remained friends for many years after their divorce. But it also means my father has left it all to me now to drive all these other people back to his place and serve them Christmas dinner, including his two divorced parents, who, if you recall, because they raised me, are also my divorced parents. And now they are both crammed in the back seat, the only thing between them, my teeny tiny sister. And the silence in the car on the way home grows unbearable until my sister pipes up from the back. Hey, Cara. Yeah? Remember that Christmas we got lost in LA? And everybody busts out laughing, including my grandma and grandpa. And I catch her eye in the rearview mirror, and I can tell, even at 8, she knows it's too soon for this joke. And I love her for it, because I get it now. See, even if neither she nor I can ever catch up with Dad, it doesn't matter, because we both have something now that I never had when I was growing up. A sister. Thank you.
Cara Lopez Lee. I love when Cara's ready to take the stage because she's like that wind-up toy that you're like, and then she just goes. Thank you. Brother, you ready to share? All right, please join us for the gospel according to Jonathan Tipton Myers.
Whoa. Okay. Most of you will have your own interpretation, definition that's maybe even more layered than this, but in general, Rosh Hashanah is known as a Jewish New Year, a day of remembrance to commemorate the creation of the world. We celebrate by practicing tshuva, or teshuvah, how you pronounce it, which literally means returning but translates as repentance. It's an opportunity to informally apologize to loved ones or friends or others or circumstances that we've wronged over the previous year. This tzedakah, which literally means justice or righteousness, usually takes the form of charitable giving or conceivably participation in some pro-justice work. And I didn't know any of this stuff before I found myself in a synagogue on Fairfax in a gymnasium about 50 yards down from Tom Bergen's Irish bar in 2017, right? My mom's black, right? She was black. My dad's Jewish. I am bluish. I am black and Jewish. So like, what does that mean, right? What does that mean in 70s, 80s New York? How do I describe it, what it means? It means separate. It means split. It means outside. It means literally outside with a little kid's face pressed up against the glass window of a candy store, peering inside at all of the other little kids, just overwhelmed by the amount of candy and smell in there, just looking around in wonder, not knowing what they're gonna pick. And that candy being camaraderie, friendship, understanding, like shared pain, resentment, joy, right? But now, I always felt black. When I saw pictures of black people hung from trees, my neck would tighten. I could feel it, right? When I saw LeVar Burton getting whipped, I tensed up. It was like, that's me. But I never felt Jewish. I mean, beyond everybody who's from New York feels Jewish. Right? I mean, like we know what Spilkis means. We know what fakakta means. We know what a real bagel is. But I never went to Hebrew school. I spent like 5 minutes when I was a little kid in Hebrew school. I don't remember a thing except my little sneakers on the mosaic tiled star as I walked down the floor of the Jewish Center on 86th Street between Columbus and Amsterdam. And only remember that because the tiles were so cool against my like little summer feet. But I never felt Jewish. When Meryl Streep had to choose between her kids or people were being lined up in Schindler's List, I wept at the decrepit common inhumanity, but I never felt Jewish. And there's two reasons for that. One's cultural and one is personal. Culturally, blacks and Jews and minorities were pitted against each other as a form of oppression to keep people fighting against each other, even though they were working with each other every day. Personally, though, my mom and dad had to get married in secret at City Hall in 1961 in Manhattan, right? Because his family didn't approve. And my aunt-in-law tells me the story of how about a week into their marriage, my dad's a composer, and he's in the pit opening for this musical, and the whole Meyers family's like lined up in this row, right? And my mother is in the row above them. And she has to sit down and look at her new family that she can't be introduced to and what she must be going through sitting there. And I mean, it was important for her that I knew everything about the Holocaust and all of the stories she talked about falling in love with this little Jewish musician who had these beautiful eyes. And I mean, but God, just think of my aunt actually found her that night in the bathroom, and she ran down to Tam and she tapped her on the shoulder. And she's like, "Are you Lena?" And she's like, "Yeah." And they hugged and started a friendship that lasted for like 60 years, right? But I could understand it, but I never felt Jewish. I felt the casual rejection on top of that of people going, "Well, you know, your mother's not Jewish, but, you know, we'll take you along for the ride." And it's really shitty because to this day, the Meyers love the fuck out of me. Like every single one of them love me like you wouldn't believe. And I love them all to death. Like I think they actually love me more than they love themselves, right? And I loved my 4'7" mahjong playing, plastic couch, having my mahjong, what was it, mandel bread baking grandma. I would sit on that plastic couch and be tortured by this bowl of plastic fruit that looked so delicious. And I loved my 5'5" authoritarian racist grandfather who kept telling me to cut my hair and don't make that sound because it's gonna stick, and whose coleslaw is off the chain. I loved him, and all of them, but I was always still, there was always still like Jewish Sesame Street. It was always like, one of these things is not like the other. One of these things just doesn't belong, right? Until I saw a movie called Menashe. Anybody seen it? It's little tiny movies. Like came out in 2017. So it takes place in the Hasidic community in Brooklyn. It was done in secret. It's about this middle-aged man named Menashe who is a recent widower, and he's got a little kid, and he's depressed and he's sad because his wife just died, and he can't keep his job, and his son is always late to school, and the community takes away his son, and they say, well, we'll give him back to you when you get married again, even though his wife just died giving birth, right, in labor. And I could never identify with anybody before because nobody ever looked like me. But when I heard about this and I ran down to the movie theater, I'm looking at this screen, and there's this guy, and he's anxious and depressed, and he's sweaty, and he's got nothing together. And for the first time in my life, I'm like, that's me. So I ran, like, immediately out of the theater. I called my friend, Debbie Jaffe, who teaches bar and bat mitzvah, and who's been trying to get me to go to this progressive synagogue for like a decade. And I called her on the phone. I'm like, Debbie, I saw Menashe. It's me. I got to go to Ikar. And when she finishes cracking up, she says, oh, that's beautiful. Next week is Rosh Hashanah. You got to go. And I'm like, well, but oh, God, I don't know anything about what do I do? And she's like, just go. So I was like, okay. So I get all dressed. It's like 85 degrees. I put on a sweater because I'm so uncomfortable, right? And I show up, and everybody's milling about, and half of them are dressed in white. And I'm like, oh, God, I'm not dressed properly. And I walk in, and I go past the metal detectors, which I felt. Yeah, I felt that. And I get in, and everybody's kind of busy, but they're all really happy and filled with this day when they're going to celebrate their own resilience, and they're wrangling their kids, and they sit down, and these two grandmas who hand me a yarmulke and a clip, and they're like, here, you can put it on with that. I'm like, don't need it, right? But I mean, that just makes me more nervous because yarmulkes, they can't stay on my head. I'm just gonna be like doing this all day. I'm just being like, huh? And they give me the books, and now I'm in Jewish grad school, and I'm like, huh? And I'm like, what? I don't know. And I make my way to the back, and I'm just thinking, okay, just stay here, stay cool. And everybody is very welcoming, and there are different types of faces and different types of music going on. And everybody kind of settles in as the rabbi is coming out from behind. There's a rabbi named Sharon Brous, this very unassuming young woman, and the rabbi is a she. And she comes out, and everybody's just ready for her, and she starts reading a letter. And it starts off like, Jordan and Amanda Anderson had been slaves their whole lives when they were liberated by the Union Army in 1864. They moved to Ohio with their children and were contacted a year later by a man who enslaved them, pleading with them to return to the plantation. Here's part of Jordan's response. She reads off this letter that says they're willing to return if they're given all the back pay that they're deserved. And he's itemized all of this for decades and generations, right? Minus the $10 when my wife had to go to the dentist like 20 years ago, right? We trust the good maker has opened your eyes to the wrongs which you and your fathers have done to me and my fathers in making us toil for you for generations without recompense. Surely there will be a day of reckoning for those who defraud the labor of his hire. His hire. Say howdy to George Carter and thank him for taking the pistol from you when you were shooting at me. Yours truly, right? The premise of Teshuvah. Rabbi Brous says, return, reconciliation, is that mistakes are inevitable in any relationship, family, system, or society, that people need a way out, an exit strategy, so that the offender is not defined permanently by his villainy and the victim can free herself from perpetual victimhood. I want to talk today about reparations on Rosh Hashanah because this conversation stands at the center of so much of what's broken in America, and because I believe that Jews, because of our unique history, because of our reparations, because we benefit by being here from the labor of people who were brought to this country, never compensated for that. We, as Jews, have a special obligation to help advance this conversation. And I reach for my jaw because it's on the ground. And I look around to make sure it's like real, right? And everybody else's is on the ground too, because they were like, hey, we came to celebrate ourselves. Like, what's going on? And as I'm sitting there, I'm frozen. Like, the only thing on me that's moving are the tears that are just running down my face. And they're running so easily that I don't need to analyze why it's coming up. And right in that moment, like in the air, like apparitions, are the two halves of myself that are like folding. Oh, no, they're not like, no, it was like coming together. And instead of that hole, there's a W in front of that hole. And I am whole. And what? And I'm like, I'm smelling, like, what is that? What is that smell? Like, that's cinnamon. And peppermint. And cherry and like coffee. And it's candy. It's all, I'm surrounded by candy. Everywhere I look, and it's all these little kids are so excited, and they're looking at me, and they're like, what? What are you gonna get? What are you gonna get? And I'm thinking, I don't know. I think I want a little bit of everything. Happy holidays.
Mr. Jonathan Tipton Myers. So you ask me, Larry, how could you possibly do 95 shows? You must have a wealth of talent. I do. They're probably sitting next to you. I'm very fortunate. We have a huge stable of just A-team storytellers. But let me tell you, in the Pantheon, there's the mere mortals, and then there are two way up. One is Claudette Sutherland, who teaches us all. The other is this beautiful lady. I'm just going to say you're welcome now. Because she is the queen, and she teaches us all every time she gets to the mic. Please welcome Barbara Clark.
That's fine. Thank you. This story is called Our First Christmas Tree. Little Tony sat quietly, watching as I ironed his shirt. But then he spoke. Are we going to have Christmas this year? Well, of course, Tony. You know Christmas comes every year. No, I mean us. Are we going to have Christmas? Like presents and stuff? And who's going to cut the tree? I wasn't quite sure how to answer him. I couldn't say, go ask Mama, because she hadn't come home from work yet. You see, Daddy always cut our Christmas tree. Every year before Christmas, he would get his axe from the woodshed, hone it to a sharp edge, and then he would go across the country road into the Maryland woods to search for the perfect Christmas tree. And Daddy liked big trees, full and lush and ceiling high. Sometimes he even had to cut the top out of them to make them fit. But that year, Daddy had moved away. Now, Mama worked as a hotel maid. She didn't make a lot of money, but I knew we would have some kind of Christmas. So I said to Tony, yes, we'll have Christmas. And when Mama gets home, we'll ask her about the tree. Maybe Mr. Williams next door will cut one for us. Tony went quiet again. He'd been quiet a lot since Daddy left. But then I guess we'd all been pretty quiet in the house because here it was just 2 weeks before Christmas and it had hardly been mentioned. But then he spoke again. Barbara? Security, attention. Now what? Am I being preempted? What's going on?
Keep going.
Okay. All right. So Tony spoke again. Barbara? Now what? Can we cut our own tree? Just you and me? We could surprise Mama and maybe she wouldn't be so sad anymore. I just stared at him. At 7 years old, he could barely lift the axe, let alone swing it. I was small for 14, but I could at least handle the axe well enough to chop wood for the kitchen stove. So maybe I could cut a tree. I'd watched Daddy do it lots of times. So I said, well, we could try. Oh, goody. Tomorrow? Can we do it tomorrow? Okay. Tomorrow, right after school, but don't tell anybody. So the following day, after school, I got the axe from the woodshed, and Tony and I traipsed across the old country road into the woods to find a Christmas tree. Now, it wasn't long before we saw the perfect daddy-type tree. We spotted the perfect daddy-type tree, full and lush and ceiling high. And as I walked around it, I realized that even if I could cut it down, which was doubtful, there was no way we could drag it home. But a short distance away, there was another tree, smaller tree, about my height, but it was beautifully shaped. And it only took half a dozen whacks of that axe to topple it. And Tony clapped his hands with excitement. We dragged the little tree home, and stood it on the porch next to the door where Mama would be sure to see it when she arrived. Tony was so giddy with excitement. I was happy to see him smiling again. Sure enough, when Mama arrived, she said, "Where did the tree come from?" "We did it, Mama. We got it. We went to the woods and we cut it and we dragged it home all by ourselves, Mama. Do you like it, Mama?" "It's a beautiful tree, Tony." And she gave him a big hug, but she cast a knowing glance at me. "We'll put it up right after dinner," she said. And sure enough, after dinner, Mama fastened the tree stand onto the tree, filled it with water, and left it for Tony and me to decorate. I got down the box of ornaments from the closet shelf and started to sort them out. As I reminisced, Daddy always put the Christmas tree in that corner. "Well, I don't like the corner," said Tony. "Let's put ours in the window." So we did. Daddy also supervised the trimming of the tree. He would say, "Place the ornaments carefully apart so the tree doesn't look cluttered." So I said to Tony, "Since our tree is so small, we'll use only half of the ornaments. We don't want it to look cluttered." Tony didn't respond. Well, we struggled to put on the 2 strands of colored lights. And then we put the ornaments on carefully, spacing them out so the tree wouldn't look cluttered. We draped on the icicles, and Tony stood on a chair to put the top knot ornament in place. It didn't take long to finish the small tree, but the presence of the Christmas tree seemed to bring Christmas spirit into the house. That weekend, Mama took us Christmas shopping and gave us both an extra $1 allowance to spend. Tony and I separated to buy each other's gift. I bought him a red cap with ear flaps because his ears were always cold. We pooled the rest of our money. We bought gloves for Mama, scarves for our 2 aunts, a spool of crochet yarn so I could make doilies for Grandma. She loved handmade doilies. We didn't have enough money to buy gifts for our 6 cousins. So Tony suggested we could make them Christmas cookies. "We?" I said sarcastically. "Well, I could help," he insisted. So early Christmas Eve morning, Mama and me got up to make Christmas cookies, with Tony's help, of course. We made peanut butter cookies. Tony took a fork to put the crosshatch marks on top. Sugar cookies. Tony sprinkled them with sugar and cinnamon while they were still hot. Oatmeal raisins drop cookies. Tony tossed in an extra hand of raisins while Mama wasn't looking. Pretty soon, the house smelled deliciously of cinnamon and vanilla and Christmas. And Mama seemed happy. She was humming. When the cookies had cooled, we counted them out into equal batches, wrapped them in wax paper, and put them in brown paper bags. We decorated the bags with Christmas stickers and tied red ribbons around the tops of them all. Oh, how pretty they looked. Tony wanted to keep all of them. Mama said he could have just one. Christmas Eve night, Tony and I sat in the living room admiring the tree. The presents were on a white sheet under the tree that served as the skirt for the Christmas tree. He was already dressed for bed in his footed pajamas. Mama was in the kitchen making hot cocoa. Tony bounced up. "Let's put some more stuff on the tree." "Why?" "Oh, I just like to see lots of stuff kind of all over." So again, I got down the box of tree trimming, and Tony set out happily, adding more ornaments onto the tree, while singing Jingle Bells out of tune. He kept at it until every ornament from the box wound up on the tree. And then he stood back and said, "Now that looks pretty." "That looks cluttered," I said. And just then Mama arrived with the mugs of hot cocoa. So I asked her opinion. "Mama, don't you think the tree looks kind of cluttered?" "Well, yes, maybe a little," she agreed. "But still, it's very pretty." See, said Tony. "Well, Daddy would have said it looks cluttered," I insisted. Mama turned and said to me, "Honey, this is not your daddy's tree." "Yeah," said Tony. "It's not his tree. It's our tree, just ours." And he sat down on the floor in front of the Christmas tree cross-legged, with his little fists under his chin, almost as if guarding it. Mama turned off the lamp, and she sat down next to him, with her arm around him. Not wanting to be left out of the hug, I sat down on the other side of her, and she put the other arm around me. In the soft glow of the Christmas tree lights, I looked over at Tony's upturned face as he mused, "Yeah, this is our tree. Our tree. And we did it all by ourselves for the first time. This is our first Christmas tree." And he looked to Mama as if for confirmation. And she agreed. Yes, our first. But then she pulled us both tighter into the hug as she said, "This is our first, but I promise there will be many more. I promise." So on that quiet Christmas Eve, we three recognized that we were still a family, even without Daddy. We had pulled that Christmas together all by ourselves for the first time. And there stood our beautiful Christmas tree as proof. Our first Christmas tree. It seemed instinctively, Tony had known the truth, had set the tone, had shown the way. For so it is written, "And a little child shall lead them." Merry Christmas.
You're welcome again. Is there anything he can't do? I saw Kevin on Broadway in Seussical. He got a Tony nomination. I saw Kevin on Broadway in Addams Family. He got a Tony nomination. I saw Kevin on Broadway in Wicked. They had already given the Tony to somebody else, so he didn't get one that time. Then he was on a little TV show. You might have seen as Bertram, the butler. Then he became the dancing, singing spokesperson for Sprouts. 10 million TikTok viewers. And last 2 weeks ago, I saw his one-man show, which was absolutely brilliant. And I'm getting kind of tired of him being so great. We never repeat stories, except this one. And this is maybe the 4th or 5th time, and it gets better every single time. It wouldn't be a HolidayS show without it. Please welcome back Mr. Kevin Chamberlain.
I've got Christmas tummy from all those stories. Got a little tickle in my tummy. Have you ever had a crappy, soul-sucking job? When I was a struggling, out-of-work actor in New York City, I was the patron saint of shitty jobs. And so now when I come across anyone who's working one, I'm always filled with this profound empathy and a deep respect for them. It's like an unspoken bond, if you will, with that fellow worker out there paying his dues in the trenches. I was a waiter for many years. So now when I'm at a restaurant, I go out of my way to be nice and low maintenance, and nothing boils my butt more than having dinner with someone who talks down to a waiter. So there is this unspoken bond with that fellow worker. It's like a young soldier who catches the eye of a Vietnam vet and nods as if to say, I've been there too, man. In the trenches, I feel your pain. It's an occupational brotherhood, if you will. So I'm walking through the Glendale Galleria a couple weeks ago, and I come upon the Santaland setup in the middle of the mall. And these two college girls, costumed as elves in the green felt overalls and red aprons, they're escorting Santa Claus through the mall, and they seat him very carefully in his oversized Bavarian wooden throne. And I'm watching this from a few yards away, and as he settles himself into his chair, I catch his eye, and I give him a nod. And in that millisecond, an unspoken dialogue passes between us. Like, I've been there, buddy, in the trenches. I feel your pain. And then without missing a beat, he returns my nod as if to say, oh, so you know. A fellow comrade. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not comparing the bond of two soldiers who suffered the horrors of war and subsequent post-traumatic stress syndrome to the bond of two mall Santas, but, okay, I am. But let me start at the beginning. It's 1985, and I'm perusing my weekly copy of the Actor's Bible, Backstage magazine, and I come across a casting call. Character actors wanted, Macy's Santaland, casting Santa and elves, $7.50 an hour. Well, $7.50 an hour. This was in 1985. That was a pretty good hourly rate. So that sounded like the perfect job. Just sit in a chair all day, bring joy to the hearts of children everywhere, have cute Wall Street brokers and hot construction guys sit on my lap. Get your picture taken, $7.50 an hour, sign me up. So after a slew of interviews and background checks, I'm hired. I'm gonna be the miracle on 34th Street. Now, it's the week before Thanksgiving when I start to make my way up to the 9th floor at Macy's department store in Herald Square to begin my week-long intensive Santa Claus training course. There are 23 other portly gentlemen of different ages and ethnicities sitting in chairs that are all way too small for us. We are welcomed by our instructor, Santa Bill, who passes out manila envelopes filled with packets of Santa research and history. So Santa Bill is this attractive, burly guy in his 40s. He has this big mop of red hair that's quickly growing gray and a thick, full red beard. And in the right light, he could totally pass as that claymation Kris Kringle in the 1970 Rankin Bass TV special, Santa Claus is Coming to Town. And Bill was Santa through and through. His obsession with the mythology of St. Nicholas and his attention to detail, his pure joy and enthusiasm was infectious. It's as if the North Pole had personally sent Bill down to train all the Santas at Macy's because, well, Macy's is the only store that has the real Santa. For you see, Macy's takes Santa Claus business very seriously, all because of this little movie called Miracle on 34th Street. Now, Bill explains to us, a visit to Herald Square Santaland is a significant moment in a child's life, and it's not to be taken lightly. It's also significant for this department store. These children are the next generation of Macy's shoppers. We want to make sure their visit is as magical and joyful as possible. And gentlemen, it's all about the picture. We're selling photos here. Photos that capture a moment in time that will be treasured for Christmases to come. It's very important that you give good Santa the moment that flash goes off. And so Santa Boot Camp began. Our days were filled with measurements and fittings for our Santa suits and wigs and beards, application workshops, foreign language classes where we learned how to ask the question, what do you want for Christmas, in 6 different languages, including signing for the deaf. We observe mock Santa visits with test groups of school children. They even instruct us the correct technique for offering a child a candy cane in a non-threatening manner. My nights are spent lying in bed exhausted as I drill the Korean, Japanese, Chinese, Mandarin, and Cantonese versions of Merry Christmas as visions of sugar plums danced in my wee little head. Shundai kwaile, shinin omideto, kurisumasu omideto. And on the day of the final orientation, this sweet, portly old man saunters into the classroom, all rosy-cheeked with this beautiful snow-white beard. This guy is the embodiment of Santa, and he knows it and he owns it. One of the Santa veterans leans over to me and whispers, "That's Santa Jack. He's the Macy's parade Santa. He's been here since the 50s. He's the real deal. He sucks on peppermints all day, so when the kid's on his lap, even his breath smells like Christmas." So Santa Jack holds up this tattered copy of A Visit from St. Nicholas by Clement Clark Moore. And he says, see if I can remember his voice, "Everything you need to know about being Santa can be found in this poem, gentlemen. Read it. Read it, study it. This is your Bible." And then he gave the most riveting, dramatic reading of 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, and it was like we were all hearing it for the very first time. His eyes, how they twinkled. His dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses. His nose like a cherry. And don't forget a little blush on the nose, gentlemen. A Santa without a cherry nose is no Santa in my book. It was like I was in the locker room the night before the big game, and Santa Jack was our coach giving us that final pep talk. And I left Macy's that evening with a bounce in my step, so excited, so jazzed and nervous about my debut as Santa Claus in less than 48 hours. So the next morning, Thanksgiving Day, my roommate Tanya and I are watching the Macy's parade on TV. And at the end of the parade, Pat Sajak, who was the host that year, announces the arrival of Santa Claus and the beginning of Christmas in Herald Square. And what to my wondering eye should appear but old Santa Jack riding high atop the Macy's float in his beautiful Santa sleigh, guiding his flying reindeer. And he is completely in his element. He's pure joy, emanating from his soul as he shakes his belly, letting forth a mighty ho, 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 and giving the crowd a warm wave. And then he does something very strange. He puts his finger to the side of his nose and gives a quick nod. And my roommate Tanya looks at me confused. It's like, why is he touching his nose and nodding? And I pulled out my Xerox copy of 'Twas the Night Before Christmas from my manila research envelope. And there, in the last stanza of the poem, I read it aloud to Tanya. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work, filled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk, and laying his finger aside of his nose, and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. And Tanya just stares at Santa Bill on the TV and says, "Oh. He's good." So it's opening day of Santaland, finally arrived. Black Friday at Macy's Herald Square. I'm in the dressing rooms. I sit in front of my mirror, carefully applying the spirit gum and to my face and then the glue on the whiskers. And I put on my red knickers, my white shirt, my red and white fur-lined jacket with the sleigh ride, with the leather sleigh riding harness, and a big black belt and black boots, a white wig, the Santa cap, and with a brush of blush, and a final touch, a cherry nose. Showtime. Now, Santaland at Macy's is an intricate maze that leads children to one of 6 different Santa houses working at the same time. The elves are outfitted with walkie-talkie earpieces so they can communicate with each other. So here's the cool thing. The elves get the kid's name, and then they feed it to the Santa house before the child arrives. So when the kid walks into the house, Santa magically knows their name, because Santa knows every kid's name, right? So now if timed incorrectly, a child leaving one Santa house could potentially see another Santa exiting the maze during a shift change or a bathroom break. So the elf assigned to me, a boyish 40-year-old chorus boy with frosted tips named Randy, he hustles me really quick from the dressing rooms through the maze and into the Santa house. And Macy's, to this day, is always a balmy 80 degrees. So by the time I'm settled in, sweat is already pouring down my face from my wig and into my eyes, and it's stinging. And Randy's like, "Ready, Santa?" And I'm like, "I guess so, it's hot in here. I'm sweating through my beard already." "Oh, this is nothing, just wait a couple hours. This place will be a sauna." And here comes Mary Beth, Santa. Okay, I clear my throat, deep breath, and welcome my first child into the house. "Why, hello, Mary Beth." I wasn't prepared for what happened next. As little Mary Beth rounds the corner and comes upon me as Santa, sitting in my throne, she freezes in her tracks, and this wave of terror and joy and awe comes over her, and all of a sudden, I am really uncomfortable about the amount of power this little girl is giving me. It's as if she's deifying me. And what's worse, I don't know how to act. I'm not on stage or in an acting class improving. This is real life. And yet I'm playing the fictional character. But Mary Beth is in real life. She's a scene partner, she's a real person in the real world. No improv class could ever prepare you for this. And Randy lifts Mary Beth onto my lap, and she and I are both shaking with terror. All hydration has left my mouth, sweat's pouring down from my forehead, and I sputter out, "What do you want to be for Christmas, Mary Beth?" What do you want to be for Christmas? I mean, what do you want for Christmas, Mary Beth? And she rattles off a list of things, and I don't hear anything because I'm still freaking out inside. Am I scarring her for life by not living up to her expectations? Has my flop sweat and my performance anxiety traumatized her into years of psychoanalysis? I don't want this responsibility, not at $7.50 an hour. So Randy snaps me out of it. Santa, time for a picture. Boom, the flash bulb goes off. And I must have looked like a reindeer in the headlights because I hand her a candy cane and little Mary Beth is whisked away and Randy leans down into my ear and he goes, "Are you okay, Santa? You're gonna have to move it along. We're gonna get backed up." Oh my God, I have 6 more hours of this. And as the day continues, I find myself completely unprepared for the shit thrown at me. It's like this. There's a little kid who rattles off of this list of toys he wants, and his father is off to the side, trying to catch my eye, shaking his head no, as if to say, "I am broke, please, don't promise him anything." Or trying to hold back tears when a little boy tells me all he wants for Christmas is to see his mother and father back together again. No one prepares me for the physical exhaustion of lifting hundreds of kids onto your lap. You use muscles you never knew you had. Your arches of your feet collapse as the weight of entire families press down on them. And there's incredibly heart-wrenching moments too. There's, I remember this little 8-year-old girl who had terminal cancer, and she only wanted to live till next Christmas, you know? So the boy. So the physical and emotional demands of this job were overwhelming. And after the first week, the Santaland manager pulls me aside and he presents me with a stack of photo prints. "Kevin, we're getting a lot of complaints about your photos. You look miserable. We need to see joy in Santa's eyes when that flash goes off. The eyes are the windows to the soul, Kevin. Here's an example. Here's an example of one of the pictures that was returned." So that job couldn't end soon enough. I was ecstatic when I made my last ho-ho-ho at 6 p.m. on Christmas Eve, and I left Santaland vowing never to return. So, cut to 2023, this past Thanksgiving, I'm watching the Macy's parade. And at the very end, Savannah Guthrie and Hoda Kotb, I think, were announcing that Santa has arrived in Herald Square. And lo and behold, here comes Santa Bill, my old teacher. He must be in his 70s now. And he's waving to the kids and grabbing his now substantial belly and bouncing it like a bowl full of jelly. Ho, ho, ho. And wouldn't you know it, he's using Santa Jack's old move. Tapping the finger on the side of the nose and giving it a little nod. Watch it next year and notice they all do it. It's really cool. So, remember when I was walking through the Glendale Galleria and I'm finding myself in this moment with this Santa who's working as the mall Santa, and we're sharing our unspoken bond, our occupational brotherhood, and I give him a nod and a wink, and then I lift my finger up to my nose. And I give it a tap. And he just stares at me like for a few seconds. And then I realize I look like I'm asking him for cocaine. So I slink away, none the wiser. But I heard him exclaim as he drove out of sight, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night."
That worked out well. So, I have fantastic news. On February 15th, we're all going to get together and do it all over again. But not Christmas, because it's February 15th, and you know what that means. We haven't decided yet if the theme of the show is going to be funny about love or just the truth, which is love stinks. We will be at the Auditorium Museum of the American West, which we love. Now a word from our sponsors. Has everybody got one of these? I'm so excited because while I was waiting for the sound check, I ran down and I grabbed the new Barbra Streisand book. And I can't wait to read about like 499 pages of all the men she's had sex with. But not Mandy Patinkin, who was angry because she wouldn't have sex with him. I heard about that. Thank you, Kevin, Diana, Celia, for inviting us back for our 4th live show. Thank you, Lou and James, for making magic from the booth. Thank you to these amazing people. If you are new, we invite you to visit our website, strongwordslive.com, where there's a link where you can sign up to be on our email list. But I just have one request. If you sign up, don't send me an email 3 months later saying, take me off the list. Because it's a lot of work to sign you up, and it's even more work to find you and take you off. So I need some commitment out of you this holiday season. Would you do that for me? It would be the best gift ever. I would now like to invite back the captain of croon, the king of Christmas. This guy, we're very lucky. He goes out on cruise ships to like exotic locations, like not the big, like family cruise ships, that are really cheap. And he goes out on like the deluxe ones, the little boutique ships, and they go to places like Tahiti and Antarctica. And we got him between cruises. So thank you for saving the day, Mr. Todd Murray. To close our show, welcome back, Todd Murray.
Thank you, thank you. Is this working? You can hear me? Thanks, Larry. Oh, we're starting. Get ready. Another year is finishing. Our work is nearly done. Now's the time of joy for everyone. There's a fella who is coming, and you'll know he is the one. He's the guy in red who's tons of fun. Let's hear it for Santa Claus, a jolly guy if there ever was. He's got presents for you and me, and if you've been real good, maybe 2 or 3. Santa shouts up, up and away, and off he flies in his magical sleigh. I'm not a foolin', there's reindeer pulling, and I don't know how or why. These deer know how to fly, but this I promise you, on Christmas Eve they always come through. So let's hear it for you and me, and a sweet yellow dog and a Christmas tree. There's no place that I'd rather be, just my baby and a gift, well maybe 2 or 3. Santa shouts up, up and away, and off he flies in his magical sleigh. I'm not a foolin', there's reindeer pulling, and I don't know how or why. These deer know how to fly, but this I promise you, on Christmas Eve they always come through. So this was filmed in an afternoon with 8 3-month-old golden retriever puppies. And the reason they are attacking me is because I have chicken tucked all in my sweater under here. Santa shouts up, up and away, and off he flies in his magical sleigh. Oh, I'm not a foolin', there's reindeer pulling, or why. These deer know how to fly. But this I promise, on Christmas Eve, they always come through. So let's hear it for Santa. Let's hear it for Santa. Let's hear it for Santa Claus. Oh, that's my dog. Thank you. So I wrote these two songs, and this last song was placed in a Hallmark movie called Christmas at Dollywood. And every quarter I get a residual that will hopefully pay for parking today. It's that big. But Larry, thank you for inviting me. This was a nice surprise. I haven't been able to be a part of this, and I don't know if there's really, I get to do a lot of shows in the holidays, but I don't know that there's any one show that encompasses the real spirit of this season as this show does. I mean, so many cultures and thoughts and experiences are represented, and I just can't think of anything better. I grew up in central Pennsylvania, and there was two African-American families in our entire town. I met my first Jewish person when I was 19, but my first professional gig was singing at HolidayS in Brooklyn. And I remember after the first rehearsal, because I was still in college, I was driving 3 hours to go do it, and after the first rehearsal, I ran to a payphone and called my mother, and I said, "You wouldn't believe the way these people talk to each other. They're yelling at each other, they're yelling, and their hands are going like this, and then they're kissing each other at the end of the rehearsal. I don't understand it." And she goes, "Just calm down, calm down." So then we got to HolidayS, and I felt a part of everybody. I just loved it until I pulled out the program, and there was my name, Todd Morgenstern. I was like, "Sir, you have my last name wrong. It's Murray." He goes, "Yeah, just leave it, just leave it, just leave it." And as I lived in New York City for the next 8 years and really got into this kind of music, which is what I do, is what we call the Great American Songbook, and I started to dive into it and have to talk about it, do master classes and stuff. The irony that the Great American Songbook is written in most part by Jewish immigrants. I don't think there's anything more wonderful that represents the melting pot that is this country. And in particularly, we're going to do one more song with you that you're going to join in with. But in particular, Irving Berlin. Irving Berlin has what they was the first Great American song, and that was Alexander's Ragtime Band. And I read, when I was doing some research on him, I read a biography, and he said he only had one memory of being in Russia. He was only 3 or 4 years old before his parents immigrated. And he only had one memory, and that was laying in a ditch, being shielded by his mother, watching his house being burned down, and in a pogrom. And, I'm so shielded in the life that I've had. And to think about the trauma of a child, of anyone going through that. And then he comes over and he writes the most idyllic music that we cherish, because I think he, of course, appreciated what we take for granted, right? So we're going to end this with a very well-known Irving Berlin song. And I know it's called White Christmas, but it certainly is more than just Christmas. It's about the holiday season. It's about everything that we've talked about tonight. So I'm going to sing it once, and then you're all going to join in with me, okay? All right. I'm going to give you my best Bing Crosby. Just like the ones I used to know, where the tree tops listen and children listen to hear sleigh bells in the snow. Of a white Christmas, with every Christmas card I write, may your days be merry and bright, and may all Christmases be white. Will you guys come out here with me? We're all going to sing together. Come on, let's go. Everyone. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, just like the ones I used to know, where the treetops glisten and the children listen, where the treetops glisten and children listen to hear sleigh bells in the snow. Sounded good there. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, with every Christmas card I write, with every Christmas card I write. May your days be merry. May your days be merry and bright. And may all your big finish Christmases be white. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Happy Hanukkah. All of it.
Going home, make sure you get your parking validated and check out a book. Remember books?
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Really, thank you.